Excellent. I think we are ready to start. So from my side, good afternoon. If you're in our time zone, might be different time zones, a good morning then, to the Bertha Centre Collective / Masterclass that's focused on driving impact by deploying catalytic capital into Africa. So we're very excited to have you here. Also appreciative of the fact that you have other things to do in the afternoon. So we appreciate you making time for us to come and listen and hopefully also partake in the debate around catalytic capital and the value it has in the African context and on the broader impact investing ecosystem. So we've got a few things lined up for today. So obviously this feeds into our Impact Investing in Africa course that we have scheduled for September in about 5 weeks' time. So we thought we'd take the liberty this afternoon to just do a quick introduction into what the course constitutes, how it works. So we'll spend about 5 to 10 minutes on that. And I'm going to ask the co-convener, Shaluba Mawela, to share a bit about that, as well as Taryn. And then after the course introduction, we will jump straight into a panel discussion led by Monica on catalytic capital. And really, I want to encourage each and every one of you to actively partake if you can. So we've got a chat function, as by this stage you are no doubt comfortable with. So please, if you have questions, put it into chat. We will farm those questions as the panel discussion continues. Some of it we might be able to answer online, and some of it we will then refer to the panelists as well. Our objective is to conclude by about 1700 hours, so 5 o'clock this afternoon, but we will conclude the panel discussion probably about 15 to 20 minutes before then, so that there's enough time for live questions and debate as well. So without further ado, from my side and from the Bertha Centre side and the Innovative Finance team, I want to hand over to Shaluba, my co-convener for the course. Excellent moderator, very knowledgeable on the topic of impact investing, and just all around a bloody nice person. So I'm going to hand over to you, Shaluba, to just share a bit about the course, and then you can hand over to Taryn as well.
Okay. And thank you so much, Jason, for that very generous introduction. Greetings, everyone, and so glad you're able to all join us today. As introduced, my name is Shaluba Mawela. I'm one of the co-conveners for the Impact Investing in Africa executive course. I'm hoping to take you through a course overview today and also share some of the benefits of participating in this course. So my role is just that. I will be quite brief so that we can get into the panel discussion. So just as overview, the Impact Investing in Africa course is a one-of-a-kind executive program that will cover a range of different topics, specifically as it relates to impact investing. Some of the areas that will be covered in the course relate to impact investing landscape, where we'll be looking at both the global landscape, but more specifically, the African impact investing landscape. We'll also cover themes of impact. We'll talk about building impact investing portfolios. We'll also go into innovative finance tools and have a really extensive program where we'll cover different instruments and what we've seen being done across the continent. We'll also look at fund creation, which is one of the more popular areas as it relates to the course. We'll look at emerging themes and also go into the very complex world around impact measurement and management. Some of the benefits of the course, they range, obviously those are individual, but these include building a really comprehensive knowledge base as it relates to impact investing, engaging industry leaders. We have lined up some exciting panels that will be part of the week-long program. You'll also be able to connect with like-minded professionals. And I think most importantly, you'll get a sense of regional best practices, practical tools, and then also gain valuable insights. As it relates to the course, it will be taking place, as Daniel alluded, in the next 5 weeks. So it will take place from the 11th till the 15th of September. It is an in-person program that will be taking place in Cape Town. So we really hope to see as many of you there. at the course. It is aimed at professionals who are interested in this rapidly growing field. Jason, if you can then just go to the next slide, which just talks about one of the great benefits of the program, which is really building a diverse network of like-minded professionals. Currently, the course has been running for a number of years. We have over 400 alumni community, and there's various ways in which the community is able to engage via LinkedIn, WhatsApp groups, and therefore different opportunities, insights are also getting shared in those networks. What's also great about the program is that it does have both continental, but also global representation. In last year's course, we had over 30 participants coming from over 10 countries across the world. And I think most importantly, you'll be able to build relationships. So we look forward to having you there. And I'll now hand over to Taryn, who will share more about how you can apply. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shaluba. Good afternoon, everyone. Or are you able to see me blank or just the background?
We just see the
Yes,
background.
no, are you able to see me?
Just the background, Taryn.
Yeah. No. Right.
We can
Thanks,
see
everyone.
you now.
It is a nice background though, Taryn, but
Yes,
you now, Taryn.
green screen story. Apologies about that. So again, welcome everyone. So I am Taryn. So I am the Client Liaison Officer at the Executive Education Department, and many of you would have received communication from me. I see some familiar names that I've been communicating with on the email thread. So in terms of the course, just jumping into the next steps, if you are ready to apply, we thought that it would be helpful to just go through that application process so that you know what to expect. So I'm just going to share my screen. You know, you can see it. DNA.
yes, we've got it. Thanks, Taryn.
Great. All right. So once you are ready to apply, you're going to navigate to the actual course page. Don't worry, I will send the links in the chat later on. So it's quite hidden. It's easy to miss. So it's on the side panel and you click on apply. A pop-up form will come up. And once you fill that out, you will then get to your actual application link. And so it looks like this. And there's a lot of wording on the page, basically just letting you know what to expect, save your link. And as you scroll down, you'll see start your journey. So you would click on that. And once you get into the next page, it will then go into your application details. So the application form is essentially 4 pages. So this is your first page where they request your personal data like your name, surname, email, and your ID, your passport number, your disability and dietary requirements, contact information, home address, and your postal address, and citizenship. On your second page, you will then find your employment information, which you will fill out. On your third page, this is a very important page. This will be your billing section. So this causes quite some confusion because you'll have various fee payers. So if you know that your fee payer is your company or a third party, it's very important that you put the correct details on this page. So you'll see company name, that, and the account contact information, that person, billing address, very important. So when you do apply, please make sure that you do input the correct details because we use these details for your tax invoice. Once that's done, you'll go on to your next page. In this course application, you are required to fill in or to submit essentially your curriculum vitae or your resume, as well as a copy of your ID or passport. This does need to be in PDF or Word format. So you would submit it over here. Once you have uploaded those documents, you can click next. and you are at the end of the application form. Here it's just an integrity statement, which you will click to agree, fill in your name, and you would then submit. So let's do that. And submit. Once you've submitted, you will receive an email to the address that you used, confirming your application. And your application will then go for a review. So do expect that review time. It takes about roughly 3 days to 1 week to receive your status or your outcome of your application. And then you will be supported by the program delivery team, which consists of your program administrator as well as your program coordinator. They will be supporting you with your tax invoice, essentially your finance administration for the course, as well as your academic administration for your course. So when you do submit that application form, please make sure that those details are accurate. Your certificate in particular is going to use the details that you use where you wrote or typed in your name, for example, or your surname. In terms of just any queries, any panicked communication or confusion, you can just let me know. I will drop my details in the chat. It is on the course brochure as well. Like I said, I'll send all those relevant links in the chat. You can reach out to me and I'll support you as best as possible. Thank you. I'm going to hand over to Monica.
Okay, thanks so much. Afternoon, everyone. I am so happy to be here today. I'm with the Secretariat for Impact Investing South Africa. That is the South African National Advisory Board on Impact Investing to the Global Steering Group for Impact Investment, known as GSG. So today we're here to discuss the topic of catalytic capital in impact investing and its potential to enable positive impact. And I'd like to start by introducing the panel members that we have here today. Janice joins us from iSeeki Capital. That's an emerging fund manager that works to secure catalytic capital for entrepreneurs. Then we have Bukhari. She's joining us from Adenia. And Adenia, they make value-based investments across sectors in Africa. And then we have Jason. Jason is from the Bertha Centre for Social Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And he heads up the research team within the Innovative Finance team at the Bertha Centre. So I want to really begin the discussion today by understanding Adenia and iSeeki Capital's approach to catalytic capital. And I'm going to ask each of you, Bukhari and Janice, to share with us your organization's approach and specifically the strategic considerations that inform this approach. So Bukhari, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. And thanks to the Bertha Centre for inviting us today. It's quite a privilege to be able to share our work with you. Just to be able to respond to your question, Monica, it's probably worthwhile to give the context within which our approach takes place and how the capital gets to be deployed. So Adenia is a Pan-African private equity fund. It's got over 20 years of responsible investing activity on the market in Africa across different sectors and markets. We have a proven track record as well as a strong and consistent performance, having executed 31 investments with 17 realized exits. I'm sharing this with you because it gives you the context of not only the experience, but currently we're sitting with 12 portfolio companies across 2 funds that we're managing. They span 24 countries and 10 sectors. So, the big picture context. The platform has raised $800 million of capital that we've deployed over time, and now we're on Fund 5 actively deploying. The approach that we have is to be on the ground and active with our portfolio companies. We have teams across 8 countries, investment teams, that are looking after these investments. And we have what we like to think of as integrated thinking approach across the investment lifecycle, and also a system thinking approach. We are working on the continent with different regions, countries, sectors, companies that require their own considered approach. And as you can imagine, it's a multivalent approach and it's situational. But I can summarize it in three broad terms. The first one is that is your investment thesis, the investment ethos that drives what you do. At Adenia, we invest in leading companies in their own segments on the continent that have significant opportunity for growth and for value creation and for transformation. And with that investment thesis, we have a very strong integrated ESG for safeguarding and opportunity and impact investing approach within which the investment thesis will take place. And we know that we can't solve all the issues around impact ourselves. So we have three main areas that we believe that we are best suited to tackle these challenges. The first one is around jobs. As you know, on the continent, the quality of jobs that we can provide through our investments, as well as the decency of the jobs, and issues of inclusion, especially around gender, are very important. And in fact, Fund 5, Adenia Capital Fund 5, is a 2X flagship fund that gives us the right basis to engender those principles. The second main pillar is around sustainability of operations. That's where we come in and look at the standards within our portfolio companies, and we deploy the capital towards uplifting them. They may be decision-making standards. There may be standards around governance, systems, people. They're also about stewardship of assets, of resources, and the big P, the planetary boundaries and considerations. And then finally, we also look at unique and specific impact that's possible for our portfolio companies, and we allow them to guide us and work with them to make that possible. And really, the big pillar behind the approach is engagement, right? Engagement of the team, how we as a team engage ourselves around these issues, how we engage with the management teams within portfolio companies. We make sure that there's real alignment with our investors, with our stakeholders, with our communities. So it takes everyone to make this happen. So broadly, I would like to say that culture is important and enabling culture, the intention for impact to take place, that it has meaning also to the beneficiaries of the impact. And finally, it's the commitment. We're fortunate to be dealing with issues of our time. I think we've been called to be creative. It's a rapidly changing space. It requires innovation, and we're always on our toes to make that happen. So that's broadly the approach, Monica.
Thank you so much, Mokgadi. Janice, I'm going to hand over to you now just to take us through your approach and specifically the considerations that inform that approach, please.
Thanks, Monica, and a warm welcome to everyone who's joined this webinar. We look forward to engaging with you. So I want to start by just painting the broader picture, which informs the why ICT Capital is doing what it's doing. As you would all be aware here, we've got the SDG 2030 agenda. So it means we have less than 7 years left in which that we need to achieve the SDGs. And as you can imagine, with everything that has happened over the past 10 years, we are super behind. And when you look at Africa in particular, it is said that we require $250 billion annually for us to be able to meet these goals. So as you can imagine, this is not just a conversation for us waiting for the public sector to miraculously be able to achieve these social ills. The private sector needs to play a crucial role. And some of these sectors that we look at ICT as also being sector agnostic are the provision of food, housing, education, health, and how the choices we make in our investments contribute towards addressing some of these goals. So as Monica had introduced, ICT Capital is an emerging, we call it an impact venture capital. Impact because the impact in which our investees drive is very key for us. as well as the financial return. Venture capital, because of the ticket sizes that we offer, ranging from about $150,000 to about $7 million. So it's a small ticket size in comparison to other firms. Our primary SDGs are SDG 1, which is no poverty. So in all our investments, we want to drive substantial impact, and that could be through job creation or through the manner in which the product, the entity is offering. And also SDG 5, which is the women equality. In the manner in which we utilize catalytic capital, it is one way we de-risk high potential and high impact early stage businesses. So apart from offering patient capital over an 8 to 10 year period, we also offer substantive technical assistance support, which is crucial for this early stage business, because you'll find for some of them, they've never worked in corporate. Some of them are pretty young. So it is important for us to embed the strong foundations which form a sustainable business. And the way in which we offer this support enables our investees in consolidating and scaling in a way that also provides strong growth in their businesses, setting them up for future or potential additional investment or access to your more traditional financial instruments, which they would otherwise not have had access to without our intervention. At ICIKI, we are aligned with the school of thought that we need to be deliberate when it comes to the upfront impact lens that is applied in all the work we do. First of all, as an organization, and I liked how Mohadi was describing the internal manner in how they interact as an organization before they even talk about impact externally. So I'm aligned with her. It's about how we relate to each other, first of all, our thought processes, and how we embed that thought process into our investee companies as well. So this means that for the investee companies, they're not just measuring impact as part of their business as usual processes, but they need to be able to consider the impact in their strategies for it to be measured. And that is the manner or the likelihood in which impact is going to be achieved. So at ICIKI, we are deliberate about the opportunities we invest in, the gaps that we are addressing, the nature of the investment instruments that we utilize, one that provides the businesses to comfortably spin that in a manner that grows their businesses. We're also deliberate in the partnerships or in the organizations that we collaborate in, either in technical assistance or co-funding. And we're also very deliberate in how we measure and report on impact. One thing that's also key is the people who put the money in us, the limited partners. It is very important to ensure that there is alignment in what our strategy is and what we are doing, because there could be certain trade-offs there that we would have to encounter when you compare to your traditional venture capital firms.
Thank you so much, Janice. I see we do have some questions coming through, so we're going to leave those for the Q&A session at the end of the panel. But already I know you've spoken about the importance of measuring and reporting on impact of partnerships of the instruments utilized, or technical assistance or co-funding. So we will answer those as soon as we're done. Specifically now, I think let us move on to perhaps, or rather delve and unpack the process behind engaging with catalytic capital. And Janice, let's stay with you. I'm going to ask you to share how your organization goes about it and how this process helps in terms of achieving your impact goals. So we're looking at the process behind capital deployment.
Right, thanks, Monica. So the first thing we've done as a fund is to identify the areas where the catalytic capital can make a significant difference. And when we look broadly, without being specific to ICIKI, these areas would typically include market gaps or underserved communities or sectors that require additional support to address critical challenges. And with our strategy in mind, we then screen our pipeline to ensure that we're able to meet our mandate. So when that investee passes that screening process, we conduct a detailed due diligence, which assesses the feasibility of that business, the potential impact it can make, and the risks that are associated with that business. And this involves evaluating whether the entity is aligned with the fund mission, as I've said, whether the solution is scalable, and the overall financial viability or the ability for them to be able to make a return that we are promising our limited partners as well. The due diligence will then inform how we design the initiatives that are bespoke to those investee companies, because as you can imagine, due to the entities being in different industries or the entrepreneurs coming from different backgrounds, so would have different strengths and weaknesses. So we then build our initiatives that are specific to the business. And this includes determining the amount of capital we'll put in, how we will structure that capital, the terms and conditions of our instrument, as well as the outcomes that we expect to see from that. We look for opportunities always to collaborate with partners. I mentioned the technical assistance earlier, where we do realize we cannot do everything for everyone, but the ability to be able to partner with technical assistance providers then means we have the opportunity to embed further skills for our entrepreneurs that we can't do ourselves. There's also the potential for us to co-invest with banks. For example, we're in partnerships with banks where they will offer working capital facilities for entrepreneurs where we have put through the patient capital. So we do offer a very comprehensive approach into trying to ensure that we offer a solution that is sustainable for entrepreneurs. Once that initiative is designed, we deploy the capital, and our approach is super hands-on, and that means we need to ensure that the capital we give you goes to what you said it would go to. So we have certain checks and balances to ensure this is done. And once that capital is deployed, we do not turn our backs on our entrepreneurs. We ensure throughout the life cycle of the investment that we're monitoring progress. We get reporting from you. We're collecting data on key metrics to ensure that there's remedial actions should we not be on track with our objectives. And we evaluate the key outcomes that are then predetermined by our goals initially to ensure that we are in check. And all this is towards ensuring a meaningful difference being made in the areas that we would have set out. You ask what the benefits of our process are. We maximize impact because we're deliberate in everything we do. And our process also encourages the unlocking of new solutions, which could have otherwise been dead or died a young death because no one was able to invest in them. We have the ability to attract co-investors as well, even if it's not early on, later on, giving an opportunity for these investees to further grow their businesses. And most importantly for me is the ability for those businesses to scale, access new markets, access new regions, and spread these impactful solutions that they would have come up with in their businesses.
Thank you, Janice. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm actually monitoring the questions as they come through, and where possible, I will actually work those in. And I think it's good right now that we speak to this, Janice, while still with you. And you mentioned your technical assistance and co-funding as a means of supporting those entrepreneurs. Is there any other assistance that you offer them alongside that? And how do you go about actually determining what they need?
So I guess the best way is to give an example. So you'll find in other instances, one of the businesses we've had, it's the ability to be able to, through specific work streams, ask them questions, take them through interviews, review their reporting in an ability that you're able to access gaps. So as ICIKI, we will then draw up a gap analysis report with remedial actions that we need to track. So if they need to, in some instances, you might find a manager actually needs to go on a financial training, so financial training for non-financial people, because they don't have an understanding of their reports, they don't understand how to read the income statement or balance sheet. So that's a very simple example. Or you might find they don't have governance processes that are in place, so we will take them through the importance of governance and how to set them up. So it is bespoke solutions that you're offering, and then tracking them to ensure that they are achieved within very specific timeframes.
Okay, thank you, Janice. And I know you also spoke to us about the ticket sizes that ICIKI Capital generally works with. Perhaps what are the business stages that you typically tend to invest at, or stages of business?
Right, that's a good question, and it has been an interesting journey for us. It's been a long journey, but where we kind of ended up are businesses that are post-revenue. So we would not invest in a prototype, for instance. If you have developed the prototype and have started demonstrating traction through selling the services or the products that you're selling through the use of what you have developed. So in other words, we would look at your revenue historically as well as projected and analyze what you require funding for. So for example, if it's a tech solution, perhaps you have the initial minimum viable product that you've already started selling, but you need additional capital in order to further develop that application. We will come in at that stage. And for us, that's a very sweet spot, because usually we find that the investees are very open to learning. So apart from getting the funding, they're able to see how best they can develop their solutions in order to sell. So is their strategy sound? We would assist them with that. So that's generally the space where we play.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Janice. All right, I want to cross over now to Makgadi. And Makgadi, I think it would be insightful to hear about a specific example where catalytic capital was deployed. And I know you want to share a case study with us. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you to do that, please. Thank you, Jason, for loading those slides. Over to you, Makgadi. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Monica. And thanks, Janice, also for the background, because you provided a very good, the timeline within which we all work, which is pre-investment, the screening, then the pre-investment DD that we have to do. Then you look at the decision-making for acquisition, after which you'll have a value creation stage, working with the teams on the ground, and then exit and post-exit. So the case study that I'd like to share with you will give you a glimpse of the different stages, the decisions that were taken, the intentions that were there upfront, and what then transpired after. So just by way of background, this is a case study that we presented at the Africa Impact Summit, and it generated a lot of interest and encouraging feedback. So we felt that it would be great to share it with today's audience with a lot more depth provided. The situation takes place in Madagascar, and the company is called OFAM. OFAM is a pharmaceutical distribution company in which Adenia invested a majority stake in February 2016. And we saw a successful exit from the investment in December 2021. Broadly, how you can qualify it is Adenia coming in as a control investor that identified a huge impact potential in OFAM within a specific country context that I'll go into, and working together with the different parties, the company itself, DFIs, technical assistants, as Janice made mention of, co-investors, together looking at how to unlock this impact and generate and harvest potential impact. So the situation of OFAM has three dimensions to it in terms of impact. you're looking at development potential at a country level, where you are in a low income country context, very challenging and complex socioeconomic market, and very high levels of poverty already. So the portfolio company has to exist within that. At a sector level, very much a healthcare system that's encumbered with other issues, chronic malnutrition, prevalence of polio and malaria, amongst others, and issues of access, especially from vulnerable groups and communities in rural areas, historically not having had access to these services. And then, of course, you're looking at the company level. Sorry, you can stay there, Jason. The company level, you have, you can go back one slide. Yeah, we can still remain here. You know, at a company level, you had a target OFAM, contrary to Genesis' example of early stage, we look at mature businesses that are keen now to go on to their next level of development in terms of growth and value creation. And OFAM was a great potential in that it was already a large distributor of medical equipment, of medical products in Madagascar, and already having had a market share of around 40% and very active in the country. So that meant that it was very well positioned for the kind of impact Adenia would have liked to see. You can see here how the actions that were taken at acquisition allowed the company to really harvest the impact that was envisioned upfront. What happened is that at investment stage, we put in place a leadership team that would have been aligned with the strategic imperatives around impact. We installed a new experienced CEO. We also had an ESG and impact officer in place, and we set up the right processes in place for this to take place. So in terms of also the other potential around business transformation, the co-investors all decided to invest significant capex into the building of a new warehouse that would allow for the services, productivity, uplifts, and other standards uplifts, so that they can then be able to service the market at a different level of operations, and also meet the very high standards of blue chip laboratories that they were aiming to meet. And then thirdly, there was an element of scaling the business and increasing business lines to create a new brand of generics, previously not having been there in the country, that would have been of a high quality, that would have also been distributed widely within the country. So solving for the issues of the democratization of access of medicines in the country around availability, access, and affordability. So this was a whole thesis that was set up upfront at acquisition, and put in place, and a system that was put in place for it to take place. We can go to the next slide, Jason. Was through a theory of change that I wanted to share with you on how we set the system rolling upfront. So here we use a theory of change to understand how impact can be generated over a life of an investment. It helps us to be intentional and be focused on what we aim to do. And you'll also see, as part of my feedback on the experiences learned, it also helps you track what you're doing so that you can measure the actions that you're taking, you can monitor them, you can report on them, and at the end of the investment, you can call what you call impact what it is, because you're able to account for it, you qualify it, and you bring in your stakeholders as well for them to talk about the experiences. So here with OFAM, we can see that we understood the business, the core business, the manufacturing of pharmaceutical service products. We also knew that OFAM had specific intentions around impact in the country, around access and quality of pharmaceuticals. At the company level, I mentioned to you that there are 3 issues we care about. One of them is job quality, sustainability, as well as unique impact. And all that, we take those into account as baseline within our strategy for change. And then we look at the different outcomes that can be had around the reach. How do we access rural areas, underserved areas, vulnerable communities? How do we also improve affordability? How then ultimately do we allow access of high quality pharmaceuticals, right? The other one if you go into the center, it's around the quality provision, improved standards, meeting the highest and stringent standards never available there, and ultimately improved healthcare services. And then if we move to the final stage around job quality, improving the conditions of employees, the training, the job satisfaction. We run surveys every year to understand how employees are feeling about the experiences in Adenia portfolio companies. We also look at issues of promotions, of gender, and of representation. And ultimately, the impact that we wanted to be had was around improved livelihoods and financial stability of the company. So this shows you how, as an investor, additionality is important. The question we should be asking is, Adenia, through its capital, investing in OFAM, was able to come in, look at the leadership, the culture, the mindset, invest significant capital for the profitability that the company needs so that it remains stable and consistent, but also scaling and accessing new markets. And then, of course, ultimately, the value created within the country system around affordability, quality, and access. So this guided the work that we did throughout the investment period. And just before exit in 2020, we commissioned a study to determine the final impact, the realized impact. I think your theory of change upfront, it's expected impact, what we wish we will have. But finally, on the ground, site-specific, talking to people, engaging, you get to understand what the real value created was. And in the case of OFAM, there was a very strong and compelling value that was created for the community. And the monetization of it would have been that €1 invested in the company would have generated 5.5 euros of social value throughout the system. So this is a very encouraging study that shows that with the right intention, the tools, the support, both financial, non-financial, technical assistance, and working on the ground with the teams, you can harvest such outcomes. I just included the other slide, Jason, the next one, to show you how internally then, from acquisition until exit, every year, you appraise yourself. So you'll track how you're doing against your system. We have our own in-house impact measurement system that allows us to measure, manage, and monitor over time and course correct. And so every year we would have evaluated the performance of the impact so that by the end of the period, we have a very good sense of how we're doing. Monica asked me as well to share with you, from this experience, it's a very positive one in that it is quantitative and qualitative, what the key insights of the experiences were. And I can share quickly with you 3 main ones that came out. The first one is we have to remain curious about where the impact resides, of where this capital went and how catalytic it was. And upfront in the theory of change, we had our own system. It took us somewhere, but in fact, at the end of the investment, we also realized that other non-core activities that OFAM was heavily invested in, which included engaging with health authorities, participating in national and international dialogues, training, development, non-core to its business was really instrumental in contributing to system value and ultimate impact that was generated, and really stakeholder-centric approach as well. Secondly, additionality. So understanding how a manager comes in, what impact have they generated that wouldn't have been possible without that capital, and where that capital went. So had Adenia not invested in OFAM, would another manager have been able to generate the same type of financial and non-financial impact? The feedback was quite encouraging to show that additional impact was generated thanks to the support on the ground, working with the teams, technical assistance, and really the impact team being on the ground and working with the management team, really key. And then the other experience from this, and this is perennial, we experience it all the time. It's around data, it's around models, it's around performance indicators, that we still need models that can properly account for impact. So maybe the executive course can help us get there one day. It's work in progress, but you can see how over time it's giving us very meaningful information. The collection of data over the period was another key issue. You need to do it to be able to get to the end qualification. And then finally, qualitative and quantitative factors, all very important, that we shouldn't really try to compare the two, but that together they create the maximum value and they give us the overall picture of the impact that can be generated. So this is one example of how Adenia, as a commercial investor, but seeking out these social and environmental return, can deploy capital to the catalytic means within the ecosystem, country, sector, and company. Very happy to take any questions on this, but this is what we wanted to share today. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mahadi. I mean, quite a few questions came through there. So maybe if we could just stay on that case study for a moment. And Jason, sorry, can I ask you maybe just to pull up that last slide again? Because some of those points there that you mentioned actually talk to the impact that you are measuring. And some of our audience would like to know specifically what metrics you use to measure that impact. And also there was also one where you spoke about social value. You quantified it for us. I think you said it was €5 that you kind of quantified in terms of the pharmaceutical benefits. So maybe you can talk to how that was quantified as well and what methodology was used there, please.
Okay. No, happy to share that. So in terms of the system that was used to quantify the social value at the end was a blend of methods that were used. We used the cost benefit analysis, where we looked at all the activities that were undertaken. We looked at the benefits, where we could monetize it. We look at the benefits monetized. We look at the costs monetized. And then also we would offset them and look at monetary value net, either positive or negative. This one was positive. There were challenges with that model. Not everything can be monetized. That's where the indicators of qualitative and quantitative come in to also give you an overall appreciation. We also used dimensions of impact to help us have a map of how to qualify the impact. What is it? How and why, for whom, and the depth. So we looked at that, which is the Impact Frontiers framework. And also we looked at other development frameworks and how to account for the development within an ecosystem of a low-income country. It did take the whole context into account, the country, contribution to the country, contribution to the sector, contribution to the company itself. And just to note that it was externally commissioned, so it also had a layer of independence to it. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. So Mahadi, I'm just going to go through one of the questions here, if that's all right with you. So was there a reduction in the medication price, or perhaps increase in the quality without the price increase after your investment? And did you have to make any trade-offs which prioritize long-term impact over fund returns? And then just keeping that in mind, we do have another question which asks around the financial return expectation from investors and what triggered their ultimate exit. So if we could perhaps just maybe talk to those two together.
Okay, so the context of Madagascar at that time is that there were no generics manufactured in country. So OFAM created this opportunity by creating its own brand of generics with a focus on quality and affordability. And we do have a statistic that we can share. I think in 2019, 11.4 million boxes of generic medicines were exclusively distributed by OFAM in Madagascar at significantly lower prices compared to competitors, well, at least available generics at that time. And it was part of the scaling and new value creation that wasn't there before. So the intention for lower cost was achieved because it was also manufactured in country. Prior to that, they were being imported.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mohali. So I know there's still a return question and what triggered the exit, but just ahead of that, a lot of the time when we're seeing the impact after the intervention, it's not always the case that the impact persists post-intervention. So have you seen this impact persist post this particular intervention?
Thanks for the question. And it's a very important one and a topical one around, post-exit, how can we have sustainable exit? And it's something we're also working on at Adenia, where at exit, we do screen for buyers that have the cognition and the appreciation and the expectation of safeguarding, of sustainability, of impact. So that forms part of our criteria of looking at buyers. We also highlight what we have done and look at how that can be taken into post-exit. And another good way would probably be to keep in touch and see if that persists. But it's definitely, I would say that it's an area that the sector, as in private equity, the whole system is looking at right now. But it's a very important one. I would also say that what's helping us is that these are issues that are on everybody's mind, right? Selling a company without a carbon footprint, you would be asking yourself, what am I getting into given the climate commitments everybody's making? So the requirements, social and from the system itself also help us enable those considerations post-exit. It's not perfect yet. We're working on it.
Thank you, Mohali. In terms of exit, what actually triggered the exit?
So the exit was very much part of your normal investment cycle, where we do have a holding period, average 6+ years, and it had come to that, and it was the right time to look for a new steward for the investment. Yeah. Okay,
perfect. And then just in terms of entering the market, I saw we had a question around the sort of competitor analysis and how you took that into account in determining whether this was indeed a viable opportunity. Do you have any comments around that, perhaps?
Yes, so I think I mentioned upfront that Adenia invests in leading companies within their segments. And at that time, OFAM was exactly that, with 40% market share and leading in the pharmaceutical space in Madagascar. So it very much comprised the sweet spot where we invest, which is mature, opportunity for growth, upliftment, and value creation. So it fitted that. And it also had significant impact potential. I mentioned that they were already active on the, in the field with the government, with the system itself, which showed that they could generate disproportionately more impact than, say, the competitors on the ground.
Okay. All right. And then just one thing I want to raise at this time, because I do see it as a theme that is coming through even in some of the questions, but ESG versus impact. I think that's debated everywhere. From my perspective, so this might be a personal approach, I see ESG as a risk assessment. So ESG looks at risk factors, and typically your ESG risk assessment should take place ahead of an investment. Impact investing and the measurement of impact I see really as post-investment. So once you've invested and you're working towards impact, that is when you want to actually measure the impact. So for me, it's two very different things. Sometimes I like to borrow from the PRI, that's Principles for Responsible Investment, which kind of sees your ESG risk assessment as the impact that the world has on investment. Whereas if you look at your impact assessment, sometimes seen as an SDG impact assessment, where you're measuring relative to your SDG goals, you're looking at the impact of the investment on the world. So it's one, the world on the investment, and the other is the investment on the world. That's how I frame them in my mind. But perhaps the question I had for you there is, we're looking at very much a systems level change here. And I think that was quite obvious from the previous slide, Jason, on the theory of change. Can you maybe just talk to where you might see the systems level change taking place relative to your ESG considerations? Because those two are different. And I wonder if you might crystallize that here for us.
No, thank you. So, yeah, I guess it's debatable, and it depends the forum in which you find yourself. And here we're looking at mainly an impact-driven forum. However, if you think of it in terms of the foundations of, say, governance and business integrity, if you can think of those as your roots, as your foundations, any company without those will be compromised over time. And then sustainability, which would be stewardship of your assets, of your people, of your processes and systems. And within that, a whole system, you're then very much focused on considerations around the environment. So as a parameter, you can look at it as a vector, as a multivariable model, where you've got the environment, considerations, risks, as well as opportunities. Then there's a social, another vector. What are the risks? What are the opportunities? And then the governance, business integrity, same thing. We typically look at it from a safeguarding perspective. You know, it would be difficult to harvest sustainable impact if your employment status is compromised, which is why, you know, if you look at the performance standards that allow us to have a minimum performance that's internationally recognized and even demanded, and rightfully so, before we can even think of long-term sustainable value creation in the system. So they're not mutually exclusive. They intersect in many cases. I mentioned that we care about gender. You'll find gender in ESG, you'll find gender in impact. It's the intersectionality of the work. And that's why integrated thinking, I spoke about it upfront, and I also spoke of a system approach. They all intersect, and depending on what you're looking at, you'll evaluate it accordingly. I hope that's
Thank you. It is. I think you've addressed our questions. All right. I want to now, I'm sure that everyone here is also curious about the key considerations when actually deploying catalytic capital. And Jason, based upon the research that you have done and just the background that you come with, could you shed some light on this aspect, please?
Great. Yeah, thanks, Monica. And yeah, thanks, Mogadi and Janice. I think it's really been insightful so far, just hearing about how both of you and your organizations have been engaging with catalytic capital. So the lens I'm going to come in with is probably going to be more of a theoretical research type lens, just from our work at Bertha Centre. So we have, in the past 6 to 8 months, we've been developing a training course for catalytic capital. So it's really interesting to see like some of that content we've created for that course, and some of those considerations about catalytic capital deployments is actually some of those things have come through in some of the narrative which Janice and Mogadi has provided within their own explanation of their own processes, which is really interesting. So just the first point regards to your question, Monica, about the considerations, is the first one you really got to look at is the strategic fit. So when you are getting that investment ask or that investee ask for catalytic capital that comes across, you need to look at your own organization and whether there's a strategic fit for you to be deploying catalytic capital towards that investee. So this will look at, as Mogadi was mentioning, you'll look at your own team, your own capabilities that are in-house, and see what capabilities you have with a particular investee to provide that kind of knowledge or support that's going to help them get that additional impact. And this also leads into what Janice was talking about, is that they have that technical assistance component as well, which they're able to provide through the organization. So you really got to look at the strategic fit components as well. And within that, you're also looking at your own company's geographical focus or sector focus areas as well, to see if that aligns with what your own organization is looking to achieve within that impact space. And also going on some other things, you look at risk and return appetite as well, see what is your investment toolkit which you have within your organization and how you can use that and whether it's a fit for you. And so that's the first one, is looking at strategic fits. And then the next consideration when you're deploying catalytic capital, Mr. Centre said this is kind of just general guidelines. Obviously, this is not really prescriptive, obviously, but these are just kind of general indications of what to look out for. So the second one you look at is additional impact, which we've heard throughout from the panelists, is that what is the additionality that's going to be provided in terms of this and your own impact goals within your organization? Are you going to be able to provide that catalytic capital, that support that is going to provide that additional impact that would not be achieved without your intervention? And so it's also looking at to see is that if you're going to have the commercial capital that is going to come through, what impact is that going to have? Would that have the same impact as if you came with your catalytic capital? So you need to consider that. Then the third one you're looking at is crowding in. So you're looking also to see, is your deployment of catalytic capital going to crowd in additional investments in the long term, or even in the short term? Are you able to do that and bring on other investors? And then the last one on also think is that one of the considerations factors you'll look at is you're also going to look at what are the alternatives and also what are the potential negative effects of your deployment of catalytic capital. So when you get this ask for investments come across your thing, what are the different alternatives? Is there a better way to deploy a catalytic capital in maybe another space that's going to create more impact or additional impact within that? And then also looking at negative effects as well. You obviously want to look at, and I think later on we'll talk about the challenges, is you don't want to distort the markets or crowd out capital as well by your deployment of catalytic capital. So those are kind of some general principles to look into when you're looking at deploying catalytic capital. And a lot of these we have seen within Mogadi and Janice's narrative around their organization, which I found it's really cool to see that coming through.
Thank you, Jason. I think another important consideration is optimizing the capital structure to maximize your catalytic effect. So can you share some ways in which organizations can achieve this, please?
Yeah, thanks, Monica. And yeah, no, definitely. So I think capital structure plays a really important part in trying to enhance the return, but also reduce the risk for the investors. And so I'm just going to share with the audience here, there's kind of this general framework, and it's called Tied Lines 5Ps, from a research paper from which was commissioned by C3. And it talks to different ways in which you can enhance the return and also reduce risk when you are busy dealing with the capital structure. So the first one is looking at price. And so price is essentially seeing whether you can accept lower than market rate returns and accept that concessionality. Then the second P you're looking at is position. So with position, you're looking at whether you can take a subordinate equity or debt position within that. So it's credit enhancement via your position within the capital stack. And then you also look at pledge. So that is credit enhancement via guarantee. And then you also look at patience, which we heard from Janice as well. So within her organization, are you able to accept longer term horizons with your investments? And that is one way in which you can enhance in the capital structure. And then the last one you look at is purpose. So that is taking unconventional terms in your investments. So it could be taking no collateral. So you're really looking at ways in which you can enhance that capital structure to be catalytic. But it's also quite interesting. So generally the main factors you're looking at in the capital structure will be those 5 Ps, which is going to adjust the risk and return within that. But there's also other things you would need to consider as well. So it's important to involve the investee in that process as well within that. And you also got to see that in terms of when you're looking to have an ambition, if you want to have an ambition of crowding in quite a bit, then you will actually need additional catalytic capital. Or if you want to create more impact, you may actually need to have more catalytic capital that is deployed alongside that. And there's also things to also consider in terms of data availability. So is there precedence in the capital structure that has been used before? And then there's also looking at whether there's a perceived risk. So if you have data available, you can use that data to make sure that you're not providing extensive catalytic capital or more catalytic capital that's actually necessary, but you also may need more if you've got data that if you don't have enough data, then you may need to provide more catalytic capital there as well. So those are just some kind of general brushstrokes of things to consider in the catalytic capital structure. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Jason. And according to you, what is the top challenge that's faced during the deployment of catalytic capital? The top challenge and how you might propose overcoming this challenge?
So, I mean, that's quite interesting in that, like, I mean, there's two that which I can probably touch on. So the first one is also you want to create a situation where you're not put in inverted commas, breeding lazy investors. So where you have commercial investors that are continuously relying on catalytic capital to de-risk their investments. So there really needs to be a pathway where you moving the commercial investors to a point where they're not relying on catalytic capital, but they're actually taking in that data and understanding the risk and return of those investments, so that eventually then they won't need catalytic capital in terms of investing in these companies. So that is one that you need to really consider, is that trying to get the transition pathway from catalytic capital. Right? Then another one is also making sure that when you're providing catalytic capital, we're not creating an environment, let's say for investee, they're able to provide better markets, rates or returns, which creates a barrier to entry in that space. So they get a favorable position, and that's what then distort the market. So those are like two kind of challenges which you would consider in catalytic capital deployment to consider. But yeah, I'll hand over back to you, Monica, and yeah, it'll be great to hear some of the other panelists' challenges in practice. Yeah.
Absolutely. Janice, maybe you could share your top 2 challenges that you've kind of seen in working with the entrepreneurs and deploying the catalytic capital in that space. What are these challenges, and how do you propose we overcome these?
So the biggest challenge we've seen is the risk perception, and how I interpret your question is when we have conversations with our limited partners, how they view us with the work that we're doing. So the biggest challenge that we're seeing is because some of these entrepreneurs, due to where they are in life, are they using the funds in the manner that they're supposed to? Are their businesses robust enough to be able to generate the return that we envision that they are? Are the industries that they're working in able to support and enable the scalability of their businesses? So that risk perception is something that is a red light that we need to manage on a daily basis. And one of the biggest ways of being able to do that is the offering of blended finance solutions, because this enables you to be able to kind of reduce or de-risk the potential lower returns you might get due to investing in some of these entrepreneurs. Another one that's very key is the balancing act between impact and returns. When you look at the LPs, they are saying if you're impact, you're probably not making any financial returns, which is absolutely not true. So it is imperative as a fund manager to be able to demonstrate the growth of these businesses and the ability to measure. And I love Mohadi's example because it demonstrates the ability to not only measure your financial returns quantitatively, but the social element as well. So those are the two I will mention at this juncture. Thanks, Monica.
No, thank you, Janice. Mohadi, I'm going to pose the same question to you, but I just want to stay with Janice for a moment. So you've highlighted the challenges that you face in terms of deploying the catalytic capital and the conversations that you are having with your limited partners. What about the challenges that you're facing in terms of building a pipeline of the underlying entrepreneurial firms that you're wanting to support? And how do you propose addressing some of those challenges?
Interestingly, my partner and I always have a chuckle about this because we actually have not had a challenge with pipeline. Whereas you find there is the usual, there's no pipeline out there. Our experience has been totally different, and perhaps it's because of the approach we've taken. We have partnered with accelerators who would have pipeline which is ripe. So they've gone through a program, gone through a technical strengthening of one sort, but they're lacking now the funding that will enable them to activate their strategies. So for us, the issue has not been the pipeline, and the innovations and businesses that are out there are absolutely exciting to be able to take to the rest of the continent. So yeah, that has not been our challenge, Monica.
Lucky you, Janice. In terms of the support that you are providing with, your entrepreneurs with, do you provide the support directly or do you provide the support via intermediaries?
So it's both. So we are aware of what we are hoping to achieve, but in the same breath, there are certain levels of expertise that we might not have, or certain tools, whether they be technological or otherwise, that we utilize certain NGOs who are already providing this kind of technical upliftments to entrepreneurs. So it's a blend of both.
Okay, thank you. And Mohadi, now over to you. So you can highlight the challenges that you face in terms of Adenia's deployment of capital and perhaps propose some solutions to these. Thanks.
Thanks, Monica. And I'd really like to echo what Jason and Janice mentioned around our relationship with time, the fact that we're looking at a time horizon for catalytic capital that's a bit untested in a way and a bit away from the convention. So relationship with time, relationship with risk, risk perception, risk identification, risk appetite, and also how are you then going to model this risk, because it's not the known, right? You may have that initially it's a bit higher. You may find that it's there's a stress situation at a certain point and there are gaps in your system. So, relooking these risk perceptions, and also what Janice was saying around the idea that there's a sacrifice to be made between impact, social returns and financial returns, really unpacking that. And then that leads me then to my third one, relationship with time, relationship with risk, and relationship with return. How do we then have return expectations? How do we measure them? And how do we negotiate them with people that may not understand the difficulty in certain segments where you have unproven track record, unproven returns, it's probably emerging knowledge, new systems, and a change environment. So I think ambiguity, time, risk, return, it would be difficult to take that to any IC, right? So rethinking, reimagining, and finding ways of making that possible. One way that we've tried to deal with that is partnerships. where you go into a transaction, understanding the different risk profiles within an investment, and then making sure that the person who has the appetite and understanding and can manage the risk will take that segment. Or you can then carve out within a difficult sector, go into an area that you are able to understand the risk, you can manage it, and you can deliver value, social, environmental, and financial returns. That would be one way. Another way, of course, is to look at incentives. If they're not in place, grouping up and motivating for those within a system. And thirdly, I would think of assistance. We've mentioned a lot technical assistance, and I can't impress on everyone how important it is in doing the work that we do. It's really enabling, it builds capacity, and it brings everybody to the same operating level. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you, Makgadi. Thanks so much. I think one of the questions that we've had, I might just address to Janice. So we are getting to our Q&A session now. So if there are any more questions, please do post those to the group on the chat. But Janice, specifically when you are looking at investing in your investee companies in terms of different stages, the ticket size that you allocate, as well as the investment vehicle that you use, does that change depending upon which stage of the business you're investing in?
So our ticket or our instrument of choice is the convertible note, purely because of the stage in which these businesses are in. It's too early to start talking valuations. Even if you did, the investment we will put in will probably take way more than a majority stake. So in order to not have that conversation, which might deter them, it's a convertible note, which is debt-like, with the opportunity to then convert into an equity stake upon exit. So that's what we look for. Monica, what was the first part of that question?
I was just looking at the investment vehicle that is actually used. So you've mentioned now the convertible note that you use, and specifically the ticket size. Is that attached at all to the stage of the business? So
it is now dependent on what the money is being used for, as well as the sector that the particular investee is in. So in some instances, the way we structure it would be an initial amount, be it 250,000, with the intention of then following on within the next 3 years. We're looking at a investment horizon of about 10 years. So really it depends with the maturity of the business, where they are, what they utilize, what they intend to utilize.
Thank you, Janice. I think I got the last part of that there. Sorry, we didn't hear you exactly, but I understood that it depends on what they are utilizing and what the money is for. That will inform the ticket size. Is that correct?
100%. Thanks, Monica.
Okay. All right. No, perfect. Thank you. Makgadi, I want to ask you a question that's come up here, and I'm sure it's a common one, but where you are co-investing and there is a difference in terms of objectives, people might be coming in with different objectives, and I guess this talks to the importance of aligning theory of changes. But how do you actually navigate that when you are coming in with a different objective to a co-investor?
You know, that's a very good question. When you look at our co-investors so far, they've been DFIs. We tend to have same alignment on outcomes and inputs. And our investment team is very clear about our expectations. And so when we seek out co-investment partners, it would be those that would be aligned. Notwithstanding, I don't see an issue with trying to meet each other somewhere, provided that the minimum standards are met and safeguarded, and that the expectation around, the sustainable outcome we're looking for, and not only that, but the actual conduct and practice and responsible investing takes place in a way that we have committed to our LPs is in place. So I would imagine there's no compromise, but you can meet each other somewhere. Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you, Makgadi. All right, so I think I've addressed most of the questions, or if not all of them, but if I've left out anything, please do put your hand up and you can have a chance to ask one of the panelists your question. So please feel free to do that. I see there's actually a question on whether this is an appropriate course for people from mainstream finance. And I can definitely say it is, as myself. I come from mainstream finance, investment banking. And in fact, after I had completed this exact course, I pivoted into this area. So it's definitely appropriate. But yes, if anyone else has got any hands raised to ask any questions. All right, I see we have here, which African countries do you usually fund? I mean, I guess we could ask, I think both SCP Capital and certainly Adina have exposure across Africa, but are there any particular countries you are not active in or anything you want to talk to there? So either one of you.
I can start. So because of the size of our fund is a $10 million fund where we chose 2 jurisdictions, Zimbabwe and South Africa. So those are our countries of choice with the intention of investing in Southern Africa.
Thank you, Janice. Makgadi, similar on your side?
Yeah, we are a Pan-African fund, now 54, all eligible. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you. Jason, I'm going to hand over to you for any closing
Sorry,
comments.
Monica, can I ask a
Yes.
question? It's just
Yes,
for Janice.
Daniel.
It's very interesting. Sorry, Monica. I haven't heard anybody choosing Zimbabwe as a first choice in a long time. So just what is the reason behind Zimbabwe?
So Daniel, first of all, because
I love the country, by the way. It's so but
that's the exact reason why Zimbabwe is the first choice, because there was no capital of this nature, or there is no capital of this nature available in the country. So that's why. And then secondly, because that's where my partner and I come from. So, you know, charity begins at home.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to thank all panelists for what you've shared today, the insights you shared, your experience. Thank you for being here. Jason, any last comments from your side, the Bertha Centre side? That'd be great to add.
No, just big thanks to Janice and Makgadi, and also to you, Monica, and the rest of the team. I think it's really been a great session. Really enjoyed it. And also thank you to the audience and for the great questions, the engagement, everything like that. And we look forward to, if I see there's faces here that have been on the course before, but if you haven't, I really do encourage you to go look at the course and apply. I mean, it's a really fantastic course, and a lot of the stuff we've been chatting about today will go in depth in the course as well. Catalytic Capital, like I said before, we've been working on a training course for the past 8 months. So a lot of that content is going to feed into the 5-day course happening in September. So really again, thanks everyone, and we look forward to chatting again and having more of these conversations going forward. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Good afternoon.
Bye-bye.